Welcome to Thursday, February 20th, InSession Live. Happy to be able to share the next hour with all of you. We got about 19 attendees signed in and know that several folks or multiple folks will be joining a little bit late. Not everybody can join during the noon hour on a Thursday, so we do record these InSession Lives and post them to the WSSDA website. So if there's something you want to go back to or the full webinar that you want to share with others, please let me know. If you can't find it on our website, it is posted there and we're happy to have you share it. We have multiple special guests today. We are still waiting for Senator Lisa Wellman to sign in. But with that, I just saw her sign in. But with that, I'm going to first start with the People's Acknowledgement. We acknowledge that our public schools and facilities operate on the traditional lands of Indigenous peoples. As we engage in the 2025 legislative session, we remember that the lands of our state capital were cared for by the people of the Squaxin and Nisqually tribes, and we make these acknowledgments to open a space of recognition, inclusion, and respect for our sovereign tribal partners and all Indigenous students, families, staff, legislators, and board members in our communities. Planning a trip to the Capitol, or maybe you haven't yet, but you want to, it's about as easy as finding a parking spot. So we always like to start with a little trip for how to advocate effectively. We've had many of your colleagues, school directors, superintendents, students come up to the Capitol and have successful mini Day on the Hills where they are meeting with their own legislators and touring around the campus. I would say right now, one of the most challenging things is just finding a parking spot. So I provided a link. It's not the Washington State Legislature website. It's actually a link to a website that's committed to the Washington State Capitol as a facility. And it gives you a lot of really great information on how you can park, access the buildings, any other tips that you need to know. Parking, I would say, is once you find a parking spot, it's all downhill from there. So there's a nice map on there to find out where you can park. And if you ever have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask. So with that, and in the interest of time, I want to welcome our most special guest, Senator Lisa Wellman, who is the chair of the Early Learning and K-12 Education Committee. She also serves on several other committees, including Ways and Means, and has been a steadfast champion for so many of our issues and priorities, and this year in particularly around school funding and finance. So thank you, Senator Wellman, for being here with us. It's a special time. It's a bit of a holiday. Tomorrow is cut off, and so your schedule enabled you to be here. So thank you so much.
What holiday are we talking about? I have to work this weekend too. So, not a holiday for me. No, but good to see you. And I'm very, very pleased to be here. It's a little different arrangement than we had at the Hilton Hotel, where I saw all of you the last time. I can't see any of you now, but I can be here with Melissa and take your questions and talk a little bit, perhaps catch you up as to where we are on some of the things that we had talked about. And if that's all right with you, Marissa, and then, it would be lovely to get some questions if we can handle that.
Yes, I think we can handle it. I think you can handle it too.
We'll
So
see.
yeah, if you would just share a little bit about, some of the priorities or policy issues that you're seeing move through, like what has a chance and where you need us to be and what you're excited about so far.
Well, thank you all who showed up to sign into the hearing for the big three. That has been, the focus, understanding what we were moving into as far as the challenges of this session, really focused in on these big three bills that really reflect the financial situation of every single school district in the state. Each has variations on a theme, but the theme is the big three need to be funded, fully funded. And so I'll just go through that those bills have gone through. They're sitting in ways and will be part of negotiations as we go forward. So we had great hearings, and thank you for the support that we heard from so many. So just to recap for you, the special education bill, we wound up And I think we probably hadn't done that when I talked to you because we weren't in session before. But since we've been in session, we've taken my bill, married it with Senator Peterson's bill. And so his bill will be the mover. We intended to be the mover, which will have remove the cap from special education. There will be a single higher multiplier for the different groups, whether you are in the general education group or the special education group. There's a single multiplier, and we also put money in the bill for ESIT because early diagnosis makes huge difference, and it's so very important that putting a little bit more money in that area is really quite important. The other thing that I think is still important, especially for some of our small school districts who have a couple of high needs kids, maybe some who are actually not even being served in the state of Washington. If those $1 million housing of those children and treatment for those children, we're going to pay out on a quarterly basis. So the school district, I think that'll ease the budget a little bit with those very, very high needs youngsters. So we've got a bill that I feel very positive about. It is very expensive. As I told you, when we started, I was going after $1.3 billion. And I'm being told it's not going to be 1.3 billion, but I want it, it'll be every bit that I can possibly get because these are real expenses. These are real overruns. And I can remember when I first came here in 2017 when I was elected and started at that time, we were going through the McCleary fix. And at the time, we made it so definitely clear, emphatically, don't spend enrichment dollars. You cannot spend enriched dollars. We're going to put money out. Well, you can't get through unless you're spending enrichment dollars, and we know it. And so I want to make sure that we're stepping up. MSOC is something that we definitely needed to look at. We have looked at, and we're looking for additional funding. I've been to maybe 24 school districts who have sent in their MSOC layout, well, the specifics of their MSOC funding. And as you all know, we send out money on MSOC, your operations costs. We send them out on a per pupil basis. But what's actually in that bucket is market pricing items. If you have to pay for school bus fuels, or if you have to pay for fuel to keep the schools heated or cooled or whatever, that is, those are costs that inflationary costs and not on a pure per pupil basis. You send the bus out for 10 kids, same amount of gas in the bus that might, if there were 40 kids being picked up. So MSOC, we're researching the formula for the future right now. We're adding funding right now. And actually this morning, I had the state auditor's office into my office because some people have said that perhaps schools are putting things in that shouldn't be in that funding. I don't believe that that's the case. I want to be able to fight for every penny and to know for sure that we know what we're talking about when we get the money, when we get the numbers in from your school districts for MSOC. We know that those are real numbers, real expenditures, and they deserve to be covered. We're supposed to cover them. The additional transportation, right now we have a bill with requiring OSPI to fix stars to give us something that works. And I think we finally got to a discussion where there can't be one stars. It just doesn't make sense that for the Seattle, which is really an outlier compared to other districts. And then we have some very small districts. So we have a couple of outliers. So we need a little flexibility in terms of how stars will work to actually get that funding. But we've also moved ahead with Senator Braun's bill, which gives you the opportunity to have other vehicles, vans that might go out to get those 3 kids that are, an hour away. We don't want kids sitting on school buses for an hour and a half or 2 hours. And so you're able to have vans in the mix that are safe for children, that have people who have been vetted driving them, and that they can be part of your depreciation schedule, et cetera. They'll be part of your transportation mix. I think that that's really important. One other thing that came up that was unusual was what I heard from you was that you were being required to align with the green building standards. And some schools were saying, we can't get there with the school that we have. We'll just pay the fine. And the thought of schools that we really need money for programs and enrichment for students, paying a fine just as anathema. It just is something I can't dream of feeling okay about. And so we went to work at finding a way to work it past. There will be an update. This is coming out of the Energy, Environment, and Technology Committee that I do sit on as well. And there is an update for the green building standards. And in that case, you will have, with a plan to move forward or to attend to your school, you will have an immediate 5-year waiver in terms of having to align with that, and then at least 2 years to renew that waiver. So we're 7 years out before you have to worry about it. And meanwhile, we will be taking a look at it. But I just want you to know that I don't want, if you have a program to update your schools and you're moving forward with that, great. But if you're worried about not having the funds to meet those green building standards and worrying about being fined, don't worry any longer. I'm sure this bill is going to move forward and mean that you've got this at least 7 years of breathing space. And then meanwhile, we can be looking at how we can get things done that make sense, with that. You may have heard, I guess I'll mention it, you may have heard that there is a simple majority for school bonds bill in the mix. And I know that this is challenging in for many areas, but I have to say, one of the things that we've been really focused on is to provide a transformation for those schools that want it and for those children that will benefit from it, to competency-based education. And when I talk about competency-based, it really is, learning by doing. And whether it's pre-apprenticeship programs, I think could fit into that box, and our skill centers, hands-on training, hands-on learning. I know we were up in LaConner, and in LaConner you can take chemistry, for instance, in a very traditional way, or you can take it in a competency-based way where you set up your own projects and learn by doing, and showing by doing how you understand the material. So that is really a very positive thing. But I'm also conscious, because I've been to many of your schools, that there are some schools that just don't allow this open, different way of working. I think that in many schools, in some schools, they're 80 years old schools, the rooms are narrow. In some cases, the desks are bolted down to the floor. It's not like you have that ability to move things around and to work in groups or do other things. I was also conscious that I was visiting Muir Elementary. Hi, Kirkland, if you're there. Muir Elementary, which is a completely what is the word I'm looking for? Everybody is sped kids as well as other children, all in one classroom. And as I was visiting, it was a wonderful, beautiful experience. It's hard to do, and there's real investment in it, but I was really gratified by what I saw. It was very, very exciting. And in the classroom, when we went into I think it was a first grade class, in one corner of the room, in a far corner from where we entered, there was a teacher and students, and they were working on something. They were having this intense discussion. all the class and the teacher over in one corner. And right next to us in the door where we came in was a little boy, call him Johnny, and he was sitting there by himself in a bunch of cushions, and he was making quite a lot of noise. And I was very distracted, and I thought, what's going on here? But I realized that the teacher and the students that were over in that other corner of the room really weren't paying any attention to Bobby. Um, and when that group broke up and the kids mingled around and we started talking to them, they said, "Oh yeah, that's Bobby. You know, he has to be by himself to get himself together. He can't always just come into our group and be with us. And when he feels like he's okay, then he comes and joins us, and it's fine." And Bobby's mother was there and said, "My kid, my little boy has friends." And they get him and they know that, that he has some limitations and he's working at it, but he has friends. And it was just beautiful. But it also pointed out to me that the room allowed for that. The room was a big room and the teacher could be off in one section working with all the students except for Bobby. That's not true of all our schools. And even Carnegie Foundation has said, that thing about teacher in the front of the room, everybody in their desk, as that's the way you learn, we were wrong. And so I'm pleased to see that kind of thing happening. Um, one of the things that we've tried very hard to do, I think we've succeeded this session, is no unfunded mandates. So I know you should all cheer on that. I do have a bill that is for EpiPens, and this is, I mean, we can do things differently. Thank you, everybody, for cheering. So for our EpiPens, this was brought to us by some students at Lake Washington High School, and they said, this can be really important in actually saving a life, and we should have EpiPens in every school. Well, we did menstrual products, we did so many things. You have to have this in every school, this in every school, and it adds up, and I know that it adds up. And so I thought about the EpiPen situation. I started calling around to different schools. And what I found is that most schools have an EpiPen already. Some student has it, or in many cases, there are many students who have EpiPens. They're put there by their parents, brought in by their parents in case it's needed. So it just made sense to, if you need an EpiPen, you can use one of the EpiPens that are at the school. You don't have to get an EpiPen, but this covers you for using an EpiPen and then replacing it. I think we can be more practical and really understand the tight positions that schools are in. So no unfunded mandates. I think that covers a lot of, I do want to mention before I let you go, hopefully that every single parent that can have their very own Parents' Bill of Rights, all the rights that are in statute. There is a book that we put together. They can get their own copy. If you go to my website, if you don't have that, you should have it. But if you don't have it, you can go to my Senate website and there's a QR code. You can take that QR code, copy it down. You can go get your own, but you can also hand it out to any parent and say, go check this out, because your rights there are many more rights than you even know about. It's indexed, so you can probably find it, what you're looking for. And then I think it will give a great deal of comfort to parents who feel like there's so much stuff going on and they're not really sure about. Sometimes parents go into school and legitimately ask to be able to go into a classroom, and they have the right to do that. Not to upset the classroom, but to go into the classroom and observe for a while. And so sometimes parents are told, thanks, Marissa, put it up there in chat. Sometimes parents go to schools and told, no, you can't do that. And this actually gives them the surety that, yes, you can. The other thing that just I'll touch on is that the amendment that was passed on Parents' Bill of Rights had a lot of things in it that couldn't be implemented. And so what we actually have done is we passed it and then we've now amended it and put it back in so that so that you really have all the rights that you see. It's a lot of it was just the wording did not align with Washington State code, with our RCWs, with our code. So we had to make sure that that aligned. But, parents being notified very specifically, parents absolutely will be notified. Sometimes we can't notify you within, 2 minutes because the police are there and we have to deal with that, whatever. But it's all laid out very clearly. And I think hopefully you'll feel very comfortable with where we are on that. Marissa, are there questions? I'm happy to take a few if that would be useful.
Absolutely, it would definitely be useful. Thank you for
Okay.
that. That's a great overview. We do have a couple questions in the chat. We've got one school director recognizing you acknowledge that the current version of what might be our favorite, you're not supposed to have favorite students or favorite kids, but maybe our favorite bill, at least one of them, is a special education bill because it does have so much in it. And it is also expensive. And so recognizing the reality that we may not get everything that's in there right now, this question is about how would we prioritize advocating for one element over another within the bill? Or would you recommend that we keep pushing for it in its entirety, and not make concessions quite yet?
I think that I guess I don't know. The answer to that question is I don't know how I would appreciate one or the other. I think that the bill is well balanced and touches in different places things that need to be addressed. The levers are dialable. So I personally would like to see everything attended to. And if we have to dial this one down a little bit and that one up a little bit, if we're given a number, that's what I guess that's where I'd like to see the preference. If I dial it, which would you prefer I dial up and which would you prefer I dial down? Or did we get it pretty much right the way it is and uniformly take it down a little if we have to? That would be good feedback. Sure, that would be nice to
That's
hear.
great. Yeah, and we'll keep all of you. I'm talking to the audience that
Yeah,
we cannot
yeah.
see. We will keep all of you apprised about how the progress on all of our priority bills are going. And then we can give feedback along the way. I would say from an organizational standpoint, our priority would be on keeping the highest multiplier possible. Um, yeah,
Duh.
yeah, because it has the greatest statewide impact.
Right.
Some of our school districts would greatly benefit from the removal of the cap or an increase of the cap, but not all of our districts would benefit from that. So
No, and
yeah,
we understood that,
yeah,
but we're just taking the cap off.
yeah.
And I will tell you, because for those who've heard me speak before, I was really concerned that if we took the cap off, that it would, that it would, there'd be kids here who shouldn't be getting IEPs. And I've been persuaded that that's not the case, that we're doing a pretty damn good job of making sure that those that need it get it, and that's who's there. And uh, the other thing that I was interested in, if you will remember, we dialed up a little bit for Gen Ed. So kids who could be included in Gen Ed, we put a little more extra money out there because we wanted to incentivize that. It turns out that it didn't incentivize anything one way or another. And so having it different, having different numbers uh, really didn't make that much of a difference. So we said, we're just going to put a flat, kind of a flat bump percentage raise. And I think that will work. I'm hoping, oh, I forgot about this, but I am very much hoping because you've asked for it, you need it, your teachers need it, your schools need it, an isolation and restraint bill that really gives definitions for comfort level, for you to feel comfortable, that the teachers feel comfortable, especially that they know what they can do and it's all right. And yes, you can restrain somebody if they've got a hammer in their hand and they're about to, yes, please restrain them. If they're running out into traffic, please restrain a child, but without some definitions, I think people teachers unfortunately have felt, kind of, where am I in this? it's challenging.
Yeah, clear expectations does well for
Always
everyone.
good. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll ask the next question, but just going back to the last one, from from an organizational standpoint for the person who asked and the benefit of all is we want to continue to apply our universal messaging about the importance of all of our priorities, not letting go of them any particular part quite yet. I think it's still a little too soon to give up. And so
Yeah.
it's our responsibility as an organization, as an individual stakeholders and school districts to keep the pressure on and the reasons why we need the full package,
I'm
recognizing
good.
I might not get it.
I'm
Yeah,
very good with that. Yes.
cool. All right, next question. Can you tell us about financial literacy graduation requirement bill and any sort of funding that would go along with it?
Well, yes, we had two bills that focused on things that we think are important in terms of the portrait of a graduate. One is financial literacy, and the other is digital literacy and computer science. And what we have done there is to require or to ask the State Board of Education and OSPI to work together to develop the standards. What is in that, what would be the standards or the information that needs to be utilized, that students need to have to graduate. We're not putting it out there as a graduation requirement. We are putting it out there as the work for OSPI and the State Board. I think that that's important, and to be able to see it both as competency-based if necessary. As I've frequently have said to you, that I see kids now with their logo, with their logo blocks doing, creating robots and working with robots and programming robots in first and second grade, kindergarten, first and second grade. So I think in many of these things, we want to actually incorporate a lot of this into just every grade, as you know, whether it's youngsters in kindergarten, first and second grade. Financial literacy, yes, kind of incorporate that. That's really actually been there all this time. But what we have done with the one bill, there's one bill now addressing both and not making them requirements for graduation now. We haven't we haven't really worked out to my satisfaction the requirements for graduation that we now have, much less throwing more into the mix. We've got X number of credit hours to utilize, and they're very, very full. In fact, I have this one thing that I've had here. I can't see it right now, but this is what used to be for schools, and now it's like this is what's required. We can only ask people to jump through so many hoops. It's getting pretty ridiculous. And so we know we want it. And so how can we, kind of integrate it into the lesson plans?
Thank you so much, Senator Wellman. I
Yeah.
I imagine everybody's happy to hear that. We had a question, sort of clarification on the Parent Rights Initiative. You already spoke to it, but they wanted to know a little bit about the changes that were adopted last year and where the concerns were around the 48-hour notice. And my understanding is that the current language as adopted in last year's initiative, the word said that parents would be notified immediately. And then there was in this year an effort to change it to be a little more, still urgent, but immediately means like right now. And like you said, you need to call the police, EMS. There are steps in place that you're required in order to ensure the safety of students and staff. So I think they just kind of wanted an understanding of what's the difference between last year and this year. It relates to that. I will tell the person who asked that I will put in the chat a document that shows a side by side.
Yeah, I was looking at the side by side right now to
Yeah.
see if I could pull out that specific amount, because this is the RCW, the mandatory language, et cetera. And the whole thing is so clear, as soon as possible. I think that's, you'll see that, I don't know if it's just easier to have them receive it.
Yeah, I'll
Or,
share the document in the chat for everyone's benefit. I would say that the language isn't final. If it's going to change, that final language isn't figured
so
out
let me just
definitively.
Let me just read a little thing quickly, a small one. So this is before we have the bill amending the language that we are now sitting with is no charge may be imposed on a parent or legal guardian to receive such records electronically. This is electronic records, obviously. Any charges for a paper copy of such records must be reasonable and set forth in the official policies and procedures of the school district. It was not workable with current law. Okay, and so it is now amended in 5181. No charge may be imposed on a parent or legal guardian to inspect or review their child's education records or for the costs of searching for or retrieving the education records. Any charges for a copy of such records must be reasonable, not prevent a parent, legal guardian, or eligible child from exercising the right to inspect and review the child's education records and be set forth in the official policies and procedures of the school, district, and public school. It's the same thing, but it's very specific in a way that can be implemented. And having something that is implementable is benefit to all of us. If you go into I know you all go into your school district offices or your school building offices, and the amount of communication that goes on and all the work that needs to be done. I think, as I recall, when I was in school, there was one person at the front, in the front office and the principal. And now, in many cases, there's a dozen people there because of all the communication that, that's required. So we want to make sure it's very clear that people understand exactly what is the law, there are many different types of records, all of which are not necessarily something that we can just whip out and hand to a parent or anybody else, and who should get it and how should they, if have to pay for it and things like that, need to be specified. So I think you'll find this is very helpful in what we did was to look at things and just make it aligned with Washington state law, etc.
Thank you for tackling that. We got two more questions. One is about Senate Bill 5187 on transportation. It's one of my favorite moments during testimony so far when Tyler Munch from OSPI said, "We're ready. We're ready right now. We don't need to study it. We know exactly what we need." He's a fun.
Oh, yeah.
So the question is, has the bill been updated to reflect that OSPI doesn't need to study it? They're prepared to give the information as necessary.
Yes, and Tyler will tell you that it was ye gods, Tyler. It's been 4 years. Yes, I think that they're ready.
Yeah.
That they have a lot of information. They're ready to move forward on putting something together, not for this session, but quickly.
So you anticipate that if any part of that bill goes forward, it will likely be a budget. It will be in the final budget potentially. So there may not be a call for OSPI to do another study per se, or do you think that still might happen if
I
something?
do think that OSPI has we had a very, very robust and I think good conversation just the other day. I think OSPI has done quite a lot of information. They have the information I think that they need. I think what we realized, and perhaps they didn't feel comfortable with, but the realization is that we have very different, one size does not fit all. So when you look at a massive, we have one in the state of Washington right now. Seattle is, kind of a massive metropolitan area. There are things that happen in that are not the same as, what happens in Twisp, very rural area. Each has unusual things, but they're different things. And so we can't, the STARS formula might be 3 formulas. And it may depend upon whether you fit into this, this view of your district, how it's laid out, or that district, whether it's, urban, suburban, rural, and even in rural, there are rural where there are mountains in between, different roads. And so I often hear from, kind of, it's like I've got 4 different, I have to go down here, kind of, even though it's that long. Mercer Island, it turns out they're underspent or underpaid by um, $1 million in terms of their funding formula today. They don't get $1 million. They've never gotten all the money that they spend on transportation. But the whole island is 13 miles around. How it could be that, challenging. So each individual place has some unique challenges, and we have to make sure we incorporate them. But we know what they are. We have the information. Let's put it together and get you something.
Great. Thank you, Senator Wellman. The last question was a request for an update on TK, and we do have Jenny Plaja from OSPI here to do that. But is there anything you wanted to say about TK before we?
I think, well, I'll be very honest, where we are with TK is, right now, what's on the table is we leave it where it is. We're not going to add additional TKs, but we're not taking away the ones that have already begun the program. Again, it's all dialable. Right now, I'm giving you where we are because I want you, you deserve to know exactly what's happening in the process. That's where we are today. And I'd be comfortable with kind of having those that have established the program continue with it, or if they don't want it, of course, stop it and put more money in the budget
Great.
to work with. Okay.
Thank you, Senator Wellman. So appreciate your leadership, your time
Thank
today.
you.
Always great to have you, and thanks for making the work fun.
Well, thanks for all you do. We appreciate that. It's been a real challenging thing to be a school director, and I really appreciate the time and effort. This is not trivial. We all step up for our kiddos, and I appreciate everything you do as well. Thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you. Okay. Well, from one great presenter and partner in education to another great partner in education, we've got our friend and colleague, Jenny Plaja, who is part of the executive team at OSPI and my primary partner up there on the Hill. So we are grateful to have you here and to shed a little light on what's the happenings with transition to kindergarten.
Thank you so much, Marissa. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. So I'll tell you what I know right now. I think everything is still very much in flux. It's moving. But just so for context on where we are with the transition to kindergarten program, right now there are about 7,400 students enrolled in one of Washington's programs, and that spans about 154 school districts. We are tracking the developments closely. From OSPI's perspective, our kind of policy position is we support expanding access to high quality early learning, period. We want as many students to have that access so that they come in kindergarten ready. We know kindergarten readiness has a strong correlation with third grade assessment. So getting that early literacy, early math, addressed earlier is better. So that's where we're at. And TTK is showing really incredible results, especially for students with disabilities and students who are low income. I know I don't need to tell all of you that because many of you are witnessing that for yourselves and seeing what it's doing for your community. So, that being said, the legislature absolutely gets to set policy and direct the work of OSPI and school districts. They have that position, they have that prerogative. We are not arguing with that. I'll acknowledge right away, as Senator Wellman just shared, they're in a tough budget situation. So we know both on the House and Senate, they're going to have to make really difficult decisions about expansion and growth of programs that are not basic ed, which transition to kindergarten does fall into that category. So really engaged in those discussions about, just being understanding about the situation that we're in. And again, wanting to focus on on prioritizing funding for the big three. And any conversation that we can be helpful about how to be more targeted in growth and expansion as we continue to roll out transition to kindergarten spots. So that's kind of where we're at a high level. There is a bill moving through House Bill 1450 that was just passed out of House Education Committee. The version of the bill that passed out is extremely problematic from our perspective. So I do want you to be aware of it, read the bill, connect with Marissa. From what I would understand, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the prime sponsor, you can ask her directly what her reasoning is, but from the comments in the public hearing and conversations that we've had, there's a perception that TK is not as high quality as private child care providers. and that it is competing with ECAP or private childcare providers and taking children who should be served elsewhere. We've been in close partnership with our partners at DCYF, Department of Children, Youth, and Families, who oversee ECAP, Head Start, those programs, private childcare licensing. And they've affirmed that overall childcare across the state has increased. So when you look at just total statewide, how many kids are being served? So it's a little hard. It's not a one-to-one, you know, if ECAP or if transition to kindergarten grows in a community and ECAP goes down, those slots are being redistributed to other places and other kids are getting served. So it's hard to do just a one-to-one comparison for any one school district or any one community. And if there are concerns with districts who maybe are opening more of a come on, come all type of model, that's not what our current guidelines say to be doing. So we'd like to have conversations with districts who are doing that. So the bill that is in play right now, it does a lot of things. It kind of reestablishes the transition to kindergarten program as not a program, but a policy that's based on an individual student. It tightens eligibility a little bit to be a student who needs additional preparation for kindergarten or who are living in an extreme childcare desert and qualify for ECAP or Working Connections childcare program and are not being served. So it tightens it up a little bit, but it still does have that exception for just a student who needs additional preparation for kindergarten, which is good. I'd say it does a lot of stuff administratively that we would have to work through, but for the purpose of you all, district impacts. Beginning in this upcoming school year, so 25-26 school year, districts would have to request advance approval to operate a transition to kindergarten program. And it has quite a lengthy process for, like an application process for districts to submit, including like the number of classrooms and students, a description of the screening process, a statement with supporting documentation of why the district is in an extreme childcare desert, results from the early learning needs assessment, verification from the Childcare Aware, it's like the statewide organization that supports childcare organizations, saying that opening transition to kindergarten will not adversely impact enrollment in other programs. So a lot of issues with that. The timing, I know you all are planning for, we're getting notifications all the time about planning for and kind of opening it up to your community enrollment for next spring. If this bill continues to move, it won't become law until after session's over or after it passes, if they were to expedite it. So I'm not sure how that would work. We'd have to set up this whole process and get pre-authorization. So I think this next year transition to kindergarten would be significantly disrupted. Another issue from the district perspective is it limits enrollment to be no greater than what enrollment was in the 23-24 school year, which is about 2,000 to 3,000 fewer students than we're seeing enrollment this year. So it's reduced slots pretty significantly, and then have OSPI redistributing those slots based on the new criteria and kind of prioritizing where they go. So a lot of unknown there. And it also limits total per pupil funding to be no greater than the average full-time equivalent enrollment funding from the 23-24 school year. So that amount was about 5,200 at that time. The current FTE enrollment funding for TK is 6,900. And so, you know, with additional special ed increases, hopefully this year, that number is going to continue to go up. So it would be requiring the program to be ran at a significantly reduced budget. Which again, I think districts will have to really consider whether or not the program is implementable under those restrained resources. So it has a lot of other stuff. I think it passed out of committee with an 11-7 vote, and most of the no's, 11 yes, 7 no, and most of the no's were on the Democratic caucus side. So there's not full agreement. So that tells us that the bill still does need some work. So we'll see what happens with it in the Appropriations Committee. I know from the budget side of things, there's also talk about, similar to Senator Wellman said in the Senate, just doing a pause, kind of grandfathering in districts who are already doing it, pausing for now, no new growth. And then once the budget situation gets better, we can have more conversations about what expansion looks like. So that's absolutely a better way to go from OSPI's perspective, to not kind of flip upside down the current program and the current families and students that are being served. So we'll be advocating strongly for that, as little disruption as possible. And on the other side of that, we already know there's bills moving through that pushes out the ECAP expansion. So there's other changes happening that'll have not as many kids getting served through other state funded programs as we had planned and hoped for. And again, our priority is wherever they're being served, more kids having access to high quality early learning. So I think that's the gist of it there. I saw Marissa has in the documents the proposed sub that passed out that has a nice like bulleted summary. So you can take a look at that yourselves and just make sure that if you are a district who has TK or who are planning to or hoping to have TTK sometime in the future, this bill will impact you pretty significantly, and we would like your voice. We would like your opinions, your perspectives, because so much of it is implemented at the local level in partnership with local childcare and ECAP programs. So we aren't able to speak statewide what it looks like in every community. So I think you all have a really good perspective of where it's working, where it could be strengthened, that we're always open to hear. And Marissa's always great at letting me know what the perspectives are of all of you, even when they don't, align with what we thought it was. So that's good. It's good learning for us, and we do appreciate that. So that's kind of where we are. I'm happy to answer questions. Or
I'm just helping folks navigate getting access to some of those documents. For all of you who can't, if for some reason you're unable to get it from the chat, I understand some of you can, but some of you can't for some reason. I don't know why the difference. You can email me directly and I'll send it to you, but I'll try to get it in there too. I guess what my question for you, Jenny, thank you first for that excellent overview, sort of raising additional challenges with the bill so our members can best engage. Sounds like the next place for them to communicate any concerns would be with the House Appropriations Committee.
yeah, that'll be, I'm assuming that's where it's gonna get assigned. It just passed out. I haven't checked the website today. I'm assuming that's where it'll go because it will have a budget impact. In this case, it would have a budget reduction. So yes, that's the next stop for that bill.
Great. Okay, I think that's all we need for now, but appreciate the updates and your
Yeah, no
ad.
problem. Thanks for having me.
You bet. See you soon. Bye. Okay, great. I'm having a little bit, so it looks like in the Q&A area, I can't actually upload a document. So if you're one of the people who can't access this through the chat, please go ahead and shoot me an email and I'll get you the attachments so you can have access to them, including the in-session agenda. And let's just go ahead and check in on the agenda, see where we're going, so you can see what we had planned and where we're at. Looks like we got Senator Lisa Wellman and Jenny Plaja, and we're going to get to hear from Levon Williams, our advocacy and policy analyst, next. And then if there's time, I'll give some highlights and what to expect from WSSDA Advocacy Week. So I'm actually going to stop my share and invite my colleague Levon to take it from here. Hi, Levon.
Hey, Marissa, how's it going? Thank you so much. Alrighty, so I'm going to share my screen. Could folks... Sorry.
I saw it.
You did?
Yes.
What is going on?
Now I see it.
Okay, yeah, sure. Cool.
Yep, all
Alrighty, it's ledge session for me, so it's for everyone. It's pretty crazy, so sorry about that. I'm Levon Williams. I'm the advocacy and policy analyst at WSSDA. I'll just kind of give an overview on the big three from bills in both the House and the Senate, kind of following up to last week in session for me. So let's dig in. So as we can see, there's a lot of progress being made throughout this session. We're as a gut check, we're in day 39. We have about 66 days left of legislative session. I know folks are excited. I'm not really counting the days, wink, wink. Um, so just looking at the dates here, February 21st, tomorrow is the policy cutoff. So all of the bills all bills coming from the Senate and the House must be out of those policy committees. So that's really helpful. And you know, not senators, legislators adopted, you know, policy cutoff to ensure, you know, they could keep some guardrails on things. So every year they have a policy cutoff date, which really keep bills alive and help them going throughout the process, and ensure that, you know, those that don't make it through would just kind of, I guess, somewhat die in that process. So February 28th, fiscal committee cutoff date. All bills that have any fiscal impacts must be out of the fiscal committees. You'll see here March 12th, senators and representatives really take the floor during this time for about 2 weeks, dealing with the bills from policy and fiscal committees. So all of the bills from their house of origin, from either the Senate or the House, must be adopted by March 12th for a bill to live on. I've heard that bills could actually come back potentially, so that's new to me. So I wouldn't say all bills die after March 12th. So we try to keep an eye out on things as bills progress throughout this session. You'll see the big three here. There are 6 different bills in both the House and the Senate. All of the Senate bills were passed out of the Senate Early Learning and K through 12 Education Committee. So all 3 of these bills were heard in the Senate Ways and Means Committee on February 11th. As you can see, there are 2 House bills, 1310 and 1338, which are MSOC and special education bills. They were heard in Appropriation Committee, and they haven't been scheduled for an executive session, so we're going to keep an eye out for that. Something to note, House Bill 1579 is a companion bill to 5187. It was really introduced late, so we don't know. Maybe the House may not, you know, really be interested in this bill. So that's something we'll try to keep our eye on during this legislative session. And to really capture, you know, our big three, it's the state and federal duty to fully fund, you know, student basic services. So we really don't, you know, cost should not be the excuse to not fund, you know, the basic needs of education in K through 12 in the state of Washington. It's just the law, it's the state law. So we really need ample funding in terms of the big threes, and you know, districts rely upon levies way too much, and it's just taken away from the student enrichment experiences. So that's really not beneficial. So kind of capturing a lot of the high level details I shared last week regarding the bills. So yeah, let's move on. These are the overarching goals or the big ask for the big three. We really support all of these efforts. I want to highlight, I'm not going to read them word for word. I gave a high level overview last week. I do want to highlight special education and those asks, and you know, the highlight for that is increasing the tier multiplier as high as possible. We know that is really a game changer. You know, that could create a really significant large revenue, and really just change the game. And once you increase those multipliers where they need to be, that's really helpful. I don't want to go into all details of these bills, but we know that the STARS formula, there needs to be an overhaul for that, because it's really just complicated and it's not reasonable for districts, and it's not predictable, nor does it really give the true cost of the services for students, who rely heavily on transportation. So, and especially those students, a vulnerable population, and we have to consider that as well. So, I just wanted to be really brief in my approach. I can share this presentation with folks if needed, but we are, steadfast during this legislative session, keeping our eye on these bills in the House and the Senate. I'm going to pause for a second and see if there's any questions.
I don't see any questions for us, but nicely done. Thank you, Lavon, for sharing. I think the only thing I would add to all of you is don't lose hope, right? We might not see all of these bills progress as quickly or as obviously as we would like, but because many of them are budget related and could be determined as NTIB, necessary to implement the budget. That's that tricky thing that Lavon was referring to, that some bills just don't die if they are considered necessary to implement the budget. We will see them come back, especially those bills that have some kind of revenue included in them. That would be something that would definitely be considered this session as necessary to implement the budget. But continue to apply pressure. Don't let up on the complete need for basic education funding. We won't either, and this takes all of us in order to keep the pressure on through the end. We've got 66 days to go, so we're not even halfway there, but tomorrow, Lavon and I are very happy to say the first policy cutoff will be behind us, and it'll allow us to narrow our focus. One last thing just for you all to note is that we will be working on updating our bill watch list, so it will give you an indication of the bills that are in play after the policy cutoff has happened this Friday. And then we'll do another update next week to eliminate those that didn't make it through the fiscal cutoff, just so we can keep our eye most focused on those bills that are continuing to go through the process so we can continue to stay engaged. I think that's it for now. We're going to give you 2 whole minutes back in your day, and appreciate all your advocacy work on the ground and for being part of WSSDA Advocacy Week. We look forward to seeing you next week, same time, same place. Have a great one.